What's the most supernatural experience you've ever had? My remote once jumped off the TV by itself, the old shoebox type of television, when I was watching with my girlfriend. Didn't fall or slide off. We actually saw it take a leap as if somebody threw it. We both just sat there being really confused before even questioning it out loud. In the early 90s, my friend and I had a radio show at our college station. Back then, we used these things called carts. They kinda looked like a cassette tape and an 8-track had a baby. We kept meaning to play this one by Janis Joplin and kept getting distracted and playing something else instead. Near the end of the show, the cart jumped off the shelf where we had put it. Like you, it did not fall or slide off. It was too heavy for it to have been knocked off by a breeze. There was no breeze in that tiny studio anyway. It literally jumped off and landed in front of us. We played Janis immediately and for every show thereafter. When I was 16, an uncle, dad's brother, passed unexpectedly. Weeks later, I had a dream about him and he told me to quit smoking cigarettes. It was way more involved, but it's been 20 plus years so I don't remember the rest. Close bracket. A month or so later, I mentioned the dream to my parents and my dad started crying. Got up and walked away. Apparently he dreamed of talking to his brother too. And he'd told my dad that he, uncle, needed to talk to me. This happened to me. 2. My grandpa died when I was 7. At some point I had a dream where he visited me. He said he was okay. That he was at peace. He told me he loved me and that he loved my grandma. And that I should tell her so. When I woke up and told her, she cried, saying she had the same dream. I still get goosebumps. When I was around 12, my mother had to go out of town for a bit and she left me home alone for a few days. We lived close to relatives so it wasn't a big deal back then. She refused to give me a mobile phone because she figured she could just call me on the landline if anything came up. She told me the date when she'd be back and that was that. The date arrives and I hear my mom knocking on the door downstairs. Calling my name. My dog, who loved her, got excited when she heard her voice and ran down ahead to greet her. She got to the door, freaked the hell out and ran back upstairs to me. I refused to go down and open the door. The phone started ringing and the knocking stopped. I picked up the phone to hear my mom say, "Hey, I'm sorry. I have to stay one more day here. I'll head home tomorrow." Double quote. TLDR, someone something pretended to be my mom. Didn't fool the dog. About a year ago, my co-worker and I went to get coffee at a new coffee shop that opened up by our work. I was dealing with a lot of anxiety over my future. Anyway, while in line there was a woman in front of me. She was giving her order when she stopped mid-sentence and looks behind her to see me. She turns back around, gives the barista her order. After I give my order, she comes up to me and, "Hey, I know this is going to sound weird, but do you know a man named Jim?" Double quote. Her words took me off guard because Jim was my grandpa. He died of cancer. He didn't live in the same state as I did, so I doubt he and this woman would have ever met him. I told her yes, he was my grandpa. And she told me that he wanted me to know that I needed to stop worrying because everything was going to be okay. Me crying in the middle of the coffee store in front of my bewildered co-worker and a couple of strangers. I've posted about this before, but when I was about 9 years old, 1995, in the middle of a bright summer day, I went to the refrigerator to get a popsicle. Suddenly a roughly teenage looking guy, with long brown hair, wearing a beige turtleneck and red plaid bell bottoms, turned around the corner into the hallway to my left, then vanished from toe to head as I looked at him. Told no one about it for years. Until after my mother mentioned meeting the, now grown, kids who lived in the house before us, who asked her if she'd seen the bell-bottom ghost. Or, there's something sweet and not terrifying about a ghost in red plaid bell-bottoms. It's like, yeah, we call him Greg. He's our bell-bottom ghost from the 1970s. Double quote. My best friend's dad, who was a second father to me, came to me in a dream and told me to tell my best friend that he loved her and that he was sorry. I woke up to my cell phone ringing to find it was my best friend, absolutely hysterical, telling me that he finally passed away from sclerosis. I sobbed all day. He was a drunk our whole lives, but it still hurt. Whoa. This is hard. I know it is. Course it's happened to me too. My grandpa came to tell he loves me and ask me to be strong at his funeral because my dad will be completely broken. I never told dad because he just won't accept a possibility of anything beyond the ordinary mundane life. More recently, husband's aunt visited me in a vivid dream, giving me instructions on how to crochet a toy for her future grandkid. When I woke up, it was Mill calling that auntie had passed that night. I will be making that toy now. The baby is due this month. When I was 15, I woke up in the middle of the night and saw this strange spotlight appear on my wall. It was a circle made up of a bunch of bright circular dots within it. It came on strong, then rotated 90 degrees and then turned off. It was so surreal because the light was extremely bright and yet it was also focused on that one spot on my wall. When I woke up the next morning, I couldn't get the image out of my head, but I just assumed I must have dreamed it. My sister and I were talking over breakfast, and she said I had this dream last night. My entire room suddenly lit up with these circular dots floating around my room. I got really excited that actually happened. I woke up and saw it too. Double quote. My sister froze. How is that possible? My blinds are completely shut. Double quote. Chills. 2. This day. One time me and my husband was watching TV in our living room. He decided to kick his shoes off while sitting on the couch and both shoes landed in front of the TV stand, on the floor and on their sides. About 30 minutes into the TV show we were watching, one of his shoes out of the F-King blue moved upwards by itself. I froze up on the couch and out of the corner of my eye, I saw my husband staring at his shoe looking startled. Then I said to my husband, "Did you see that?" He replied, "Yay." My eyes started to get really huge. And he saw that I was about ready to flip out and he said, "It's okay. Calm down. I'll burn some cedar." So then he did and all felt well again. We're native, so we just smudged that hole out of our house. My dad died 2 years ago. My brother was at his house down the street. My children and I were laying on my bed talking about all the great times with my dad when the back door opened and closed. I crept down the hall to see who came in, and my brother called while I was in the hall. He said, "It's over," and I said, "What?" And he said, "Get over here." Dad came to tell us he had passed. I have no doubt. For the next month I would catch a whiff of his cigarettes or his cologne, especially when I was having a hard time. I'm sure he was just making sure I would get through the tough time. Middle of the night. Sleeping. I hear a sound like someone is taking a paperclip from my desk and throwing it against the wall and it bounces across the desk. I wake up to this noise. Turn on the light right by my bed as I sit up. I look over and see nothing. Weird. As I'm ready to lay back down, my 20-pound steel gumball machine falls from the shelf over my bed directly onto my pillow where my head was not 30 seconds earlier. I flip out and scramble out of my bed as I'm totally taken by surprise. As I stand up, I feel something under my feet. A paperclip. I put the murderous gumball machine on the floor, the paperclip back on my desk, and crawl into the safety of my comforter. Nothing like that happened again. On Monday I called a local restaurant to see if they had any cinnamon rolls left because my pregnant wife really wanted a cinnamon roll. I walked in and before I could say anything, the woman behind the counter asked how many cinnamon rolls I want. My first time buying from them too. I asked how she knew and with a completely straight face said, "Oh sorry. I have a lot of witches in my family." In high school I was sitting in a friend's living room. First time ever in this house. I could describe every room in the house. Floor plans. Unused pool table in the basement against a wall. Piled with boxes. Freaky feeling. I ended up in a part of town that I had never been to and everything was as in the dream. The same woman with her cart after doing laundry. The church a few blocks away. The path I took to avoid talking to people. Still don't know what it meant, but nothing else happened, so it probably wasn't a big deal. I tried to take my parents out for Chinese, but my dad grabbed the bill. As I opened up my fortune cookie, I argued that it was my idea and therefore I should pay. He would hear none of it. My fortune cookie said, "You should pick up the bill." Double quote. He still didn't let me pay. Nothing bad immediately happened, but I wonder what would have happened if I had been allowed to pay. I had no job in late 2002. Early 2003. Had graduated college. Looking for a teaching job. My friend sent an email saying that she was moving to China to teach and they were looking for secondary teachers as the school was expanding to higher grades. I kid you not. I had the closest thing one can have to a god moment where I felt totally stunned or struck that I should go for it. Went for it. Got the job. Moved to China for 2 years. Met my wife. Moved back to the US and we have adopted 2 children from Asia. We've been married 16 years and are super happy. Shrugs. Not much or provable. But the oddest experience moment I've had. Driving to El Paso. It was far along enough to be in the complete nothingness west of Abilene. About 2:30 PM I was running short on gas. I come up on what looks to be an old school style gas station. I pull in. Guy comes to my window and says, "What you want?" in her I just say regular. About a minute later the guy says, "Sir, there's writing here that says no leaded gas. You want premium?" I say sure and he gives me exactly 10 gallons. I tell him to fill it all the way up and he says, "Sorry sir. You hear what happened, right? There's a nationwide gas shortage." I ask what year he thinks it is and he replies 1973. So I shrug. Give him the $2.50 he charged. And drove off. I look in the rearview mirror and the place has disappeared. Only tire tracks in the dirt. Playing with a Ouija board. Had done it many times. But this one time they claimed to be a great aunt of someone present. It was odd. But not scary. Every time subsequent to that aunt what's her name always showed up. Eventually just stopped taking it out. Back when I lived at my dad's house, in my room I was sleeping, I usually kept the TV on. But this night I had trouble sleeping so I turned it off. Eventually I fell asleep but was startled awake by a really tight grip on my ankle. My body was still partially asleep so it was very hard to move my body. I did not see anything besides my leg getting lifted up some and then I started getting pulled off the bed. I am a big guy so that would take a pretty strong person to do that. I was able to grab onto the edge of my mattress and pull myself back, then grabbing the remote and turning the TV on to have some light and seeing nothing at the end of my bed. I turned the light on and checked my entire room and there was nothing out of the ordinary. Still no idea what happened. Not me, but my brother. Our mom died when I was 17 and he was 15. Brother was sobbing in his room alone when someone began rubbing his back in a comforting manner. There was no one else in the room except for him. So very sorry for your loss. As a mom with a 15-year-old son. Your second sentence brought tears. I get sleep paralysis a lot years ago. I always saw a girl in a white gown with long black hair covering her face creeping up towards me. But I always snapped out before she could come inches towards my face. A co-worker of mine passed suddenly. Less than a year ago. Young. Less than 40 years old. And had a son maybe 3 years older than my oldest. Used to babysit him when I had days off after I resigned. We worked very well together. Kind of like how one has a work spouse. Nothing at all romantic, we just always got along great. Anyway, less than a week after he died, he came to me in my dreams. Telling me he's okay. And his son is in good hands. He had recently been divorced. He told me not to worry. And he's very much at peace. I gave him a big bay hug. As we sometimes did when we knew we wouldn't see each other, for instance. After I resigned. I woke up crying. I still smelled his aftershave when I woke up. My heart still aches for his family's loss. However, him telling me he's at peace takes some weight off my shoulders. And while I miss him, I know that he'd be pissed off if I started worrying again. I feel better when I think about him now. Because, while I'm not religious or anything, or really believe in an afterlife, I know that he's okay. When I finished my O-levels, me and 2 friends decided to have a walk in a park cuz. Not sure why tbh. During the walk, it suddenly rained. We were in the middle of the field with no shelter anywhere near us. So we decided to just keep walking. Despite seeing heavy rain on all sides. As we kept walking, none of us got any water on us. Not a drop. It might be possible that we somehow walked between 2 different rains. IDK. But it was still the most extraordinary thing that happened to me. My nan had always believed in a heaven life after death. I had never really given this a thought until a few days after she passed away. I was in a pretty bad place. I was really close to my nan, so her passing had crushed me. And when I was thinking of her, I remembered that she believed in heaven. So I said, "Nan, if you're really watching over me from a heaven, give me some kind of sign." A few seconds later, an alarm on my phone starts going off. Thing is, I never set any alarm to go off. The phone was full on charge and in good condition. There was no reason for this alarm to go off at all. Yet it decided to go off right then. Probably was a huge coincidence. But I like to think it was my nan answering me. Obligatory not me, although I have had a few. But my grandma recently told me that my great-grandfather, my grandfather's father who has passed away, had this old as balls radio that was given to them after he died. Once they inherited it, they decided to get the old thing running again. They got everything running, turned it on, and it started playing music from the 1920s. It wasn't set to an old Timmy station. There was nothing inside of it. It just played. My great-grandpa died on the 31st of December of 2002, his birthday. That radio was roughly 80 years old. Hadn't been plugged in forever. And just did that. I have a recurring dream that I swear is either a repressed or suppressed memory. In it, I'm 3 years old and riding my tricycle. It's very late in the evening, when the sun has gone down far enough so that the only hints of sunset are orange lines on the horizon. But the street lights haven't yet come on. My mother is rinsing out some paintbrushes with a garden hose, keeping an eye on me as I pedal around the yard. Suddenly, she drops the hose and runs into the house. And I'm looking down on her while going up very rapidly. Then I wake up with the strange feeling that something has been taken from me. But I don't know what. For most of my life, I didn't put much into it. Then, I started reading about alien abductees and noting parallels between my recurring dream and their supposed experiences. Maybe I was briefly taken. Maybe not. But it's something to think about nonetheless. I had a dream my dog had gone to a distant corner of our heavily wooded backyard and dug a hole to get out. Which was odd because he wasn't a digger. He was stuck on the other side of the chain link fence because the hole was at a steep angle and he couldn't squeeze back through. I lifted the fence up enough for him to get back through. The next day I got home and the yard was eerily quiet. He'd usually run up to greet me. I thought of the dream and walked straight to the corner where I found him waiting on the other side of the fence and let him in. I once had an inexplicable light appear on the wall. This was before the time of people owning LED flashlights, and yet it was a perfect white circle about 6 in diameter and appeared to be projected from a close range, yet nothing there to project it. It moved across 2 walls before disappearing. The movement was not at all a straight line and seemed more organic, as if some life form created this light for the mere 2 seconds I witnessed it, before vanishing. No one was projecting through a window, and I don't have any ideas except a trans-dimensional being or microscopic alien to explain this, but I know this is what happened. It is the only reason why today I consider the possibilities of what's out there. Any thoughts? When I was 1 or 2 years old, my mom placed me on a TV stand so she could take some photos of me, and the TV stand was in front of the bed that my mom was lying on. So when I started to fall off, my mom quickly took a couple of photos, then tried to get me. But when she found me again, I was straight back up. She thought she was just experiencing some DJ acute vu, but when she looked over the photos she found something weird. She took 3 photos. On the first one, the TV next to me was going ballistic. It was like glitching out like crazy. On the second photo there was this white figure coming out of the wall, and on the third photo the white figure was wrapped around me. It was weird, and we still have the photos to this day. Some people believe us, some don't, but I don't remember anything. I was staying at a little house in Savannah, GA, that is known to have a ghost. While I was sleeping I could feel someone climb in the bed with me. She wasn't scary. And I didn't see her, but I could smell her. It smelled like an old woman. Not sure how to describe it, but that is what comes to mind. I asked my mom, who was also staying there, if she got into the bed with me that night, and she said no. So I know it was something. There was some other things that happened during our stay, but that was the big one. I really want to go back to Savannah and stay again. It's a beautiful city with a lot of ghost stories. My grandfather passed just before Christmas, and there were so many little signs he was still around. My favorite one is the day after I spent a night sobbing over a toothbrush. When I was little I slept over his house a lot and had this pink dragon tails toothbrush. When we were cleaning out his house we found the toothbrush still in his bathroom cabinet decades later. In the moment it was just old toothbrush. Whatever. But a few nights later I started thinking about it. He had to have seen it at some point in the last couple decades, and he chose not to throw it out. It meant something to him, and I threw it out. I cried so hard and searched online for it, and finally found it on eBay for $40. I made an offer for $20 and they accepted. $20 I didn't really have at the time on a stupid toothbrush I'll never use, but it made me feel better. The next morning I go to work. I'm stressed and still grieving, so I'm crying already. And then I see a $20 bill just laying in the grass. I fully believe my grandpop saw my stupid breakdown and paid for that stupid toothbrush. Dead of night. I get this uncontrollable urge to wake up and crawl to the edge of my bed and peek down the hallway into the kitchen. I can't explain it, but I literally felt possessed to do so. I was maybe 4 or 5. When I reached the edge of my bed and stared down the hallway I saw a figure. A ghost. It was my uncle. He had recently died due to a tragic car accident. He had a broken leg. Was crossing the street. A truck lost control. My uncle couldn't run fast enough with a broken leg, so the truck ran him over. So anyway, I'm staring at this figure and I realize it's him. The ghost looked just like him. Glasses and all. It didn't even have legs, which was fitting. But I remember I didn't feel scared at all. It was almost a daze. I felt this warmth in my chest. It was so calming. After a few seconds it was almost as thought he heard a loud noise. He jumped and scurried down the other end of the hallway. I snapped out of it and started to sweat profusely. I was shaking. I tried to tell my sister about it, but she told me I was scaring her. I wasn't even all that close to my uncle since I was so young. I still think of him often.